Kia ora everyone, welcome to another G News update. Well, I'm down here at Sandy Bay. It's a beautiful, tranquil place on a Monday morning, the 8th of September 2025. Now, this morning there was some breaking news that we've all heard of, that Tom Phillips has been shot dead, and he's been on the run for about 3 or 4 years, hiding out in the forest as a fugitive with his children, and that's all come to an end, and there's been a whole lot of reporting in the news, so you're probably fully aware of that situation from the police, and we'll hear about it tonight on all of the news services. So I'm not going to talk about that, but what I do want to talk about is some of the things that have happened in the last 24 hours. One of those things was that Christopher Luxon attended the All Blacks test on Saturday, and at the time apparently couldn't wait to get round the media this morning and tell everybody that when he stood up after the game, he twisted his knee and was very badly injured, hobbled out onto the field because there was some limelight there to grab. So he clutched hold and grabbed hold of Razor, because the cameras were on Razor after the All Blacks had beaten the Springboks. And Mr. Grabby Luxon Fig Jam, Prime Minister of New Zealand, managed to give him a really tight hug and hang on there to get maximum television coverage, which is very important when you're falling away in the polls and everybody around town is just talking about your leadership and how you've either got to go or somehow or another the economy will save you as the weather warms up and people feel better. So it's got to that. That's the strength of the National Party economic plan, is wait on the weather. Maybe the weather will help. Perhaps the economy will come round. It's about as scientific as it gets from the National Party at the moment, because they basically have no bloody idea what's happening in the economy, and it's got away on them, and there's no plan other than maybe, who knows, maybe the weather will help. So Luxon was busy this morning telling Mike Hosking, that he didn't want to talk about it, but I better talk about it. And yes, I twisted my knee when I stood up, and I felt bad because the All Blacks had been out there battling like real men, and I only have to stand up and I'm injured. So that's the real strength of the man, I think. We look for a strong leader. Well, this guy twists his knee when he just gets up out of his seat after sitting on his ass all the way through the game while other people do the job. And then he goes out on the field and he takes credit and gets himself a bit of spotlight and into the, down into those changing rooms, where he glad handles everybody, grabs everyone if there's a camera around. So that's the first point. It's something he mentioned on TVNZ Breakfast as well, because it was such a big secret. Oh, poor Christopher Luxon, having to talk about this, but he couldn't wait to talk about it because it's about himself. So anyway, there was that issue. Then there was also something more important, and that had to do with climate action. Now, some of you who follow climate action and realise that Simon Watts is the National Party Minister for the Climate. He's also the guy that's messed up the water, that, after everybody criticised Three Waters and said, we don't want a Maori takeover, we don't want any kind of Maori at the seat, we don't want to honour the treaty, we don't want any co-governance, we don't want to share any power, this is the white way to go about things. Simon Watts, he was right in there, battling away with all this kind of stuff with the Taxpayers Union from Atlas. Well, now it's about farmers, you see, because with the National Party losing votes hand over fist from everybody that pays attention, they want to hold on to those farmer votes. So if it means not saving the planet, if it means defying the Paris Accord and giving the middle finger to climate scientists, because people that run airlines and sell soap, they always know best. They know a lot more about everything than climate scientists. Climate scientists, what would they know about the climate? Heck, we're going to continue farming and farting and generating methane. So there's a post-cabinet press conference this afternoon, and in that session, it's quite possible that there's going to be an announcement that says there won't be any more additional heating from the farting of animals, which is, generating methane. Now, as you and I know, and we've known for a long time, our kids know, even the wallpaper knows, methane generates about 80 times the heating effect of carbon dioxide, 80 times the heating effect of carbon dioxide. So there's a huge opportunity for small countries, whether they're big or small, actually, to do something about methane and to actually take it seriously and not just keep pandering to short-term money, to the votes, to staying in power and putting the whole world in front of your own political fortunes. So what did Christopher Luxon do? Well, basically, all of these very, very senior, astute and highly respected scientists, they wrote an open letter to Christopher Luxon. I think it was on the 4th of June, 2025. And they said, look, we're the IPC, we're also these respected scientists from all of these institutions around the world. And we're just asking you, Christopher Luxon, not to do the stupid thing of ignoring the science and saying you know best and being Mr. Cool, because methane, is 80 times, more heating than carbon dioxide. Now, it only stays up there for about 12 years in the atmosphere, but that's a long time for those huge heating effects to be up there. And, carbon dioxide will stay in the atmosphere for hundreds of years, whereas methane's only there for 12 years or so on average. But that huge 80 times heating effect is a serious problem. And these scientists were urging Christopher Luxon to just please listen. A lot of National Party voters believe that we should be doing something about the climate. And before the election in 2023, Christopher Luxon, he sidled up to those voters and said, look, I'm prepared to talk to you about how serious I take the climate, so just vote for me. And people were like, all right, I'll trust you, Christopher Luxon. You've run an airline, you've sold some soap, you can be trusted. You're not going to go back on your word. But now that we see that Luxon's losing votes and his leadership's really, coming to its last days, Luxon's going, stuff the world, stuff saving the planet. We're not going to lose a single cent. Our farmers need to keep making hand over fist short-term profits. There are bigger countries out there. Go and talk to them. So this is basically what he said to these scientists when they wrote this letter to him. He said, stuff off, go and talk to other countries. We're a small country. Sure, we might be belching out more methane than most countries, and sure, it might be 80 times more, heating up the atmosphere, but we're not going to do stuff all. And I've got Simon Watts here who can pretend that we've got our own scientists. Now, this is the old trick that we saw from John Key. I've got my scientists, you've got yours, therefore the ones that I've paid off or that belong to the fossil fuel industry. This is a bit like smoking cigarettes. You know how cigarette companies have their own scientists that say there's no harm, it doesn't cause any cancer, it's perfectly good, get it down you, 10 packs a day. This is the same kind of sort of trick that we're seeing from Christopher Luxon as he tries to con New Zealand out of doing anything about methane. So what we're going to see is this no additional heating compromise, which means, well, let's just keep everything the way it is. Let's not do a damn thing. Let's keep it the way it is and keep on farting that methane up into the air, do nothing about it. And let's get Simon Watts out there, the guy that didn't want three waters and that gave you all those really, really big, heavy, massive water bills to pay. Simon Watts water bills. And 40 entities that do water now, not 15, not small bills that you would have got if you'd gone with three waters. Now you're going to have to pay Simon Watts. You're going to pay the Simon Watts bill. Well, Simon Watts is at it again, and we're expecting Christopher Luxon to stagger down the walk to the post-cabinet, to the cabinet office, and then come out and make an announcement this afternoon around about 4 o'clock at a post-cabinet presser, limping along on that sore, twisted knee, because he's such a man that he twisted it when he stood up at the All Black game, but could still get out there for that, look at me, I'm grabbing onto Razor publicity, and so Simon Watts will probably be there, and they'll be talking about this no additional heating, which all of those climate scientists said, please don't do this is crap, and then Newsroom, Mark Dolder actually exposed the fact that our friend Mr. Simon Watts, the water bill guy, he's the climate guy, the climate denier guy that's going to actually get up there probably as well and say, look, our scientists say that this is all cool just to keep on farting and generating all that methane. So what we'll see is in New Zealand, we've got this kind of range between 24% and 50 something percent reduction for methane as a target by 2050. We'll see them pull that back down to some target that they will claim their scientists said was a good scientific level. But Mark Dolder has already pointed out that that's fake news, that's incorrect, that's just misleading the public. And so we'll see if Simon Watts does that again, because it can't be trusted, right, on the climate. So the government's doing everything it can to make the climate worse. New Zealand's reputation's been dragged through the mud. We have won the fossil fuel sort of award now. Our reputation has been ruined. It was once a leader under Dame Jacinda Ardern. It's now a laggard. We're doing everything we can to bring the world to those tipping points to make things worse. And every single voter that keeps voting for National is voting for planetary doom for future generations, for massive heat, for huge floods, for droughts. And if you keep voting for National, that's what you'll get. So don't complain in future when your children are broke, lose all the family fortune, everything is underwater, people come flooding here from all over the world as climate refugees, and this way of life goes up in smoke because you kept voting for National when they kept doing this kind of stuff about methane, like they're going to shortly. So that was the second topic I wanted to talk about, apart from twisting his knee. Now, there was also the New Zealand Last Conference, and there was a lot of talk about what they were proposing, and Christopher Luxon came on television this morning and he basically said, look, we changed the contributions that the government makes to KiwiSaver, and it's very, very popular. We went from 3% to 4%. Winston's proposing a 100, like a 10% compulsory KiwiSaver contribution from everybody in 2 steps, but he hasn't detailed those tax cuts. And you've had people like Thomas Coughlin come on and talk to the Herald now, because Lion Ryan's back from his big holiday in Australia, and they've kind of agreed that it looks like, we couldn't afford to actually do what Winston's saying. So it's populism, there's no details, show us the money, there's no money behind Winston, he hasn't got the details. But at the same time, Luxon's saying, look, everyone's entitled to come out with their own policies. You can actually do this, and we've done something similar. So we expect to see parties come out now, but when it comes to the election, they better have everything costed properly. And what are these tax cuts, and can we afford more tax cuts? Given that, right now, Treasury is saying, please don't spend a single cent more in health. And we heard Christopher Luxon also being confronted this morning about New Zealand hasn't pitched up to the OECD with our health expenditure now for about 7 years. So we have no way of comparing whether we're spending too much or less or more than all of those other countries. And it came as a huge shock to Christopher Luxon because he's not a thinker. He didn't bother to question. He didn't look up the OECD and say, well, where's New Zealand on this chart in any of the days that have gone by in the last couple of years, or even the time when he was in opposition. So he hasn't got around to thinking about any of these kind of things, like how we sit with that. And he didn't have any answers, so he didn't know. And this is pretty typical for Christopher Luxon. He only knows what he's told to memorize. He's only got the script in his head that he's been given by his spin doctors. So he doesn't know. He doesn't have any further knowledge. He'd be useless in a quiz night, for example. He just wouldn't know. So he didn't know anything about health expenditure, but what he did know was that repeated spin. So we kept hearing how there was a record spend in health, how $1 in every $5 is going into health from the government at the moment. So you don't talk to me about money. There's enough money. I don't care about what the need is. I don't care about what's actually going on in health. All I know is that I've been told to keep repeating. What I would say to you is that we've spent a record number of dollars on health, and therefore the problem isn't about money. But, we're shortchanging our senior doctors who are considering whether they're going to go on strike again later this month. We've heard from the nurses who are saying, you might say you're employing a lot of people, but most of those shifts are actually understaffed. There's like massive gaps, where we don't have people, and it's unsafe. It's unsafe staffing levels, and on and on and on. Our health professionals keep trying to be heard, and Christopher Luxon keeps on not listening, like he doesn't listen about the climate, like he doesn't listen to climate scientists. He doesn't listen to doctors, he doesn't listen to nurses, he doesn't listen to academics, he doesn't listen to anyone, because with the greatest of respect, Christopher Luxon has sold some soap. And therefore he knows everything, and that's why I guess he's doing so badly in the polls, because he's just kind of like an egomaniac that thinks he knows everything, comes across really badly, out of touch, and carries on like this all the time. So it's a really poor show. We've really made a huge mistake voting for this guy and his game, and we shouldn't ever be fooled again by it. But at the same time, with we saw Winston doing his populism, not having the numbers, not knowing anything about how he's going to pay for things, and Nicola Willis not saying a damn thing. But if it was Labour, you can be sure that they'd be in there saying, "How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Tax and spend, tax and spend." But they don't do that with Winston, because they're afraid of Winston and they have to kind of bow down. Now, speaking of being afraid, I did notice that Christopher Luxon was quite afraid of Mike Hosking this morning. And Mike Hosking said, look, this Simon Watts guy, the one that's going to tell us that no additional warming, no additional heating from methane is somehow okay, when the entire world's global scientists are saying, no, it's not. So this guy, Mr. Water Done Badly, Water Done Expensively, he's been in Australia, and apparently Mike Hosking was quite pissed off that he hadn't actually jumped at 5:30 in the morning, because he's got Christopher Luxon like a puppet on a string, and Luxon will ring in at 1 o'clock in the morning if Mike says you need to do this at 1 o'clock in the morning, and this other minister, he needs to do this at 5:30 when it suits me, when I'm good and ready. Well, everyone jumps because it's Mike Hosking, right? And Mike Hosking controls this government, and they march to his tune and to his schedule. Now that's quite interesting, isn't it? How much control this little man, Mike Hosking, has over the scheduling of media appointments, and how if he just says something like, I don't really like this Prime Minister, or I'm not very impressed with Simon Watts, the Climate Minister, the Minister of Water Done Badly, then it really punishes the National Party badly, and they lose votes, so they jump. So this is the power of the media, of News Talk ZB over Dumbtown on one hand, and also over the National Party through Mike in the mornings, who is positioned as some kind of rational superhero guru guy that knows everything. But anyway, those are the main points I think that I wanted to cover. Here on Sandy Bay, you can see people taking out their boats, and they just go out, maybe a couple of friends go fishing. Every now and then someone will come out here and mow their lawn, but it's a pretty beautiful sanctuary here. It's a rocky coastline here, and it goes around a little bit further to Oniroa. So we're kind of between Oniroa and Palm Beach here, and Sandy Bay is a beautiful little place. And I'll probably just leave it there. There was obviously some more news from Winston as well about trying to get people to sign up to his values, because his values, he thinks everyone should have his values. But I think everyone knows that no one can tell you what your values should be as a New Zealander. And if you wanted to kind of like charter up some kind of values in common, that would be a huge exercise to try and get everyone to agree on a handful of values. So this is kind of rubbish talk. This is kind of talk that is geared up around people who only joined New Zealand First because they resented things like vaccine mandates, and so they left wherever they were voting for and they went over to New Zealand First in a protest vote. And now that the COVID has gone, they probably don't have too much to moan about anymore. They maybe prejudiced people, bigots. I think there's a lot of them that are very bigoted about who comes to New Zealand, and they want their colonial white values to come first, like English first, and do what we do here or bugger off. That kind of stuff is what Winston was going on about. But it's not very tolerant. It's the kind of stuff you see from the ACT Party, these right-wing parties, as they play up to try and get over that line. Bernard Hickey came out this morning and he said, look, I think New Zealand First got about 173,000 votes in the last election, and so they got 6.08%. Now, it only takes about 50,000 votes to go out the window before they're hitting that 5% threshold and they're out of politics altogether. So as things change and the winds blow around how people feel, like do you feel resentment still that you felt? Or do you see the cost of living crisis in the way that these people are handling or mishandling everything, whether it's the economy, whether it's public health, whether it's punching down on the poor, whether it's the housing market, whether it's the way in which they don't tell you the truth about climate, or they reject climate science. All those kind of issues that really, really affect people at the end of the day in the long term. Can Winston still hold those 30 or 50,000 votes that came over to him, because they come and go. So a lot of what you're hearing at this conference in the weekend was pandering to those people. It's just kind of like, oh shit, we'd better feed them some red meat and keep them on board, otherwise we'll fall below the 5% zone. So I think that's all I want to say to you today, and I hope you have a wonderful day. It's a beautiful day here on Monday, the 8th of September at Sandy Bay on Waiheke Island, and I'll talk to you all again soon. See you now.
Welcome to G News, the good news.
Yeah.